Hey there, YouTube. I thought I'd give you a 100-mile summary of the S18, 1,100 miles of the MSX 100 volts, and another 1,000 miles or more, maybe more like 1,500 miles on the E+. So, what is it about these wheels, right? Well, the E+ was my starter wheel, and I did about 700 miles on this wheel, and then got the MSX over here. Let's see, here's the selfie stand. The E Plus was a fantastic starter wheel, damn near indestructible, and anybody that wanted to try it, they got a chance. Moving on to and it only goes 12 miles an hour easily. You can get maybe 16 out of it before you get a tilt back, but it's not a speed wheel, but it is highly maneuverable, and I found it the most effective for cutting between, like lots of people and going around them and doing little tight maneuvers and stuff like that. Off-road grass, it can be kind of slippery. I never upgraded the tire on that wheel. So after about 6 months riding, I ordered the MSX, and when I first got the MSX, it was tough to make that transition. The MSX has the speed, but still no suspension, and when you get out on the road with an MSX and you hit potholes like Syracuse, New York, boy, that's a rough thing to get used to. Now, I've had good luck with the MSX. It's been a nice, reliable wheel, and you can see I've put a seat on it and an SR 241 Shinko tires on it now. Shortly after I got it, I put the Shinko SR 244 on it. I wanted some knobby action. It just made it feel like the wheel was even bigger around, and I was already struggling with slow speed stuff on it, especially riding with him. He runs out of speed in the summertime. And winter was coming when I got it, so I put a knobby on it, and I kept riding the E Plus about as much as the MSX for 3 or 4 months. And once I went from the Shinko to the knobby, boy, it was the best wheel in the wintertime with lots of snow in Syracuse, New York. So I rode that for the last year now, and the one thing that did fail on it is the whole lighting system is out. It's been out for 3 or 4 months now. The day that it went out, I had dropped it, laid it flat in a puddle, so water could have got in it. I don't think that's what it was, though. I also had it on a stand where it could spin, free spin, and I free spun it to the max cutoff, because after that it doesn't restart itself and keep spinning, and I wanted to examine the charger with the UC wheel log. I use wheel log with it. Both the E Plus and the MSX were nice and easy getting them out of the box. Pull them out of the box, power them on, they just worked. Now the S18, let's talk about that bad boy right here. The S18 is like the hardest wheel to get out of the box you'll ever deal with, or maybe Kingsongs are, but boy, what a pain in the ass. First of all, it came locked, so I had to put the Kingsong app on it to get it started, and then I'm speed locked for another 6 miles, which is, I don't think it's understandable. I think they're treating all their customers like they have to protect them from themselves, and they're even locking wheels that they don't approve of the sales of, and that's just like freaking remote nanny government Chi-Com garbage I didn't like. But and their app, when you install the app to unlock the wheel, it wants to access all your contacts, all your phone, your camera, your microphone, your data on your phone, anything else you can think of. It has to have those, GPS location, etc., in order to unlock the wheel, just to ride it the first time. I'm sorry, but I don't feel like giving away all the privileges to my phone all the time. So after I got it unlocked, I uninstalled the app, and eWheels was really great support getting started. Because the charger it came with was, first time I plugged it in, it blew something inside. I opened it up and looked, the fuse was okay. It wasn't the fuse, it was under the coil, and just past the fuse that something burnt and left a burnt mark on the cover to it. Anyway, I had a friend over, another EUC rider, Sasha, who wanted to try out the wheel. We kind of quickly ran out of batteries that we had, and we still hadn't figured out how to pump the shock. And when I did, I got the shock pump stuck following the directions, It turned out there was a little block you're supposed to install down here to inflate it with, and that's loaded with controversy. So I'm 100 miles in, and I'm actually loving this wheel now. But what I'm saying is, when you get the wheel out of the box, it's not like these other two wheels that just turn them on and go. This wheel comes with a laundry list of issues that you got to solve. The biggest issue to solve on the MSX was putting an off-road, the Shinko 241 tire on it, which was too wide, and I had to shave the knobs off the side. Same with the SR 244. I think this Kenda 240 or 262 would have worked on the MSX without any knob shaving. So I've now installed the Kenda 262 enduro tire, street and trail sort of. It's not a full-on knobby, but it's still smooth on the road at 30 miles an hour. I have had it up to speed. I haven't hit the tilt back yet. I like to keep a little speed margin, and I gotta say, being limited to 31 miles an hour gives me a little bit of apprehension. I primarily don't want to use it on the road when I got the 42 mile an hour MSX sitting right here, unless I'm going to deal with crappy roads in Syracuse and a ton of potholes. But if I can ride around here in Maryland without the potholes, then the MSX is a better street traffic machine. You'll notice I shaved the side pads out. I cut this section out right here. That solved my issue of slow speed maneuverability. I mean, the E Plus is king on slow speed maneuverability, but when you and then the MSX, it's a little piggish, but it works, and you get used to it. This wheel with these pads in here, it was harder to do slow turns and slow maneuvers than the MSX by far. Part of that issue is these foot plates aren't very wide, so my foot would tend to be like way out here, and then I'm hanging over the side of the foot plate, and the outside of my foot would get sore, and I'd be hanging my toes over the front, kind of like angled out like this. And so when I cut the pads, that made a major difference for slow maneuverability. And the way I ride, I tend to keep a little space there, and I can quickly lean to one side or the other, make contact, use power pad. This cut edge makes a little power pad effect. Same for braking on the back side of it. Okay, other issues with it. Getting it up, so unboxing it, getting the shock inflated, the shock pump got stuck. And after that, there was a hole here. I did cut this. I did cut this out here. It used to go down through here with the pad all the way across, but I cut this section of it out. But even then, after the first time attaching the deflated pump to the shock and then pumping it up, this whole mechanism here goes from out here into there, and it got the shock pump stuck here, and I really had to use pliers and a screwdriver to pry it out of there. And I ended up with a little bit of buggered up threads, at least one or two on both the pump and the valve. So the second time trying to feed it through here to attach it, there was just no way to attach it until I got these little elbows here. That made it easy. Oh, and then a few days after that, I saw somebody using the block that who knew what that was for in the unboxing, right? Um, but later I've learned that I don't want the block anyway. These elbows are the way to go, and I put one on the bottom too. The benefit of those is that, you know, I can twist the whole pump as I'm attaching or detaching and get through that place where it's leaking air on the connection disconnection pretty quickly. The lower chamber is so small that you really want to twist that off of there as quick each turn as quickly as possible to minimize that air loss. Recently I did a video comparing the block method to the elbow method of inflation. It turns out with the block in there, at least I used a 2-inch block. Maybe the real block's a little off that. It might be 2.5, I'm not sure. But when I inflated it to 200 and 100 with the block in, then let the block out, both the top and the bottom went to 150. So the lower chamber got higher and the upper chamber came from 200 down to 150, pumping on up to 200 thanks to the elbow with it fully extended. And the lower chamber increased to 175. Well, that's a decent pressure setting. I usually go from like 200, 150. So I probably use a little less pressure than that in the lower chamber. What happens when you disconnect the lower chamber and then reattach the pump, you find out when you set it for 150 and you reattach, the pump says it's at 100. So that lower chamber is so small in volume that you really do lose a lot of pressure reconnecting the pump. What else to talk about? Oh, putting the tire on. So the 262 tire didn't fit with the inner fender. The inner fender just didn't have enough height for it. So in here, in here you can see I still have part of the inner fender right there. And that's where the main wire goes up from down below through a junction box sort of thing, and then into a wire holder, which basically makes it so that wire inside there doesn't get up against the tire all the time. So I ended up cutting just the left side off of the whole inner fender and just using the left side. And if I show you from the front here, you can see that it's kind of naked. Oh, that's the dog shit bag holder there. But you can see the inner fender tops out right here where I'm clicking with my fingernail, and that's out of the way. It is kind of odd that the tire seems to be skewed to the left a little bit, and I am having a tick 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 noise when I'm going slow or even fast, tick 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 tick, which is once per revolution. Sound, I don't know, it doesn't quite sound nasty like a bearing would sound. It seems to be more like, well, it showed up after trail ride, mid-ride. And on the trail ride, what I did is I went down a really steep hill, pushed it across a little stream where I don't think I got any water in it. I did get mud all over the wheel. And this was with the Kenda just put on. And then I climbed a really steep trail hill. And by the time I lifted it over the guardrail and put it on the street, I started noticing the noise. The noise hasn't gone away. Initially, I found I could put my finger in here and push on the bushing that, maybe it's down here, right there. Push on the bushing that separates the fork assembly from the wheel bearings itself. It made a similar noise, but tick 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 by pushing on it. But it turned out when I took the wheel apart, the put the inner fender back in, that wasn't what it was. So maybe it's a, a missing ball in the ball bearing, or maybe it's more like a wire that's not tied secure, so that every time it goes around, it bumps up against the inner shell or something like that. Probably more likely one of the wheel bearings disintegrated or something like that. I don't know. If I do have to spend money to replace all the guts of this thing, I think I might just get a parts for a veteran Sherman, put a Sherman motor in it, and see if I can control it with this controller. Oh, another big thing with this wheel is it just beeps your ass off. It beep, beep, beep. You're riding along and it beep. And what the heck was that? Oh, it changed its headlight setting. Automatic headlight, right? Okay, well, most of the time I turn the headlight off in the daytime, use it at night, and it's got an automatic mode, and it even beeps when it goes in automatic mode. And sometimes you just can't figure out why it beeped at you. Connect the EUC World app, and it beeps another 7 or 8 times. If I'm in a work setting and using the wheel to commute, I don't want to be beeped at like that. I don't even like being beeped at when I'm on a ride. So one of my future mods is going to be to open up the controller up here, and see if I can put a switch on that beeper. I mean, I guess I wouldn't mind having a switch where I could turn it off, but if that's not easy to find a place for the switch, I'll just cut the frickin' wire. Beep beep your ass. That's annoying. So all the problems and issues aside, is it worth having a suspension? Heck yeah. I used to get sore ankles from speed bumps and curb shots, and I'd avoid curb shots like the plague. Now I do extra curb shots just because it's fun, and it doesn't make my legs sore at all. Potholes are no problem at all, and with the combination of the Kenda tire and the suspension, I've even hit like a 6-inch deep hole in the grass that was covered by overgrown grass, but it was like a trench 6 inches wide and maybe 7 or 8 inches across, just deep enough for the wheel to go all the way down in, and then you get that boom sense forward, like, is the wheel gonna come with me? And it did. So I've already survived a couple near crash situations thanks to the suspension and thanks to the knobby. And the knobbies has only been on there less than a week. So 100 miles in, it's now my preferred wheel for the average ride out with a dog. This time of year, he's averaging about 6 miles an hour, and he might do a peak at 15 to 20 if it's cold, like raining or something like that. But for the most part, it's too hot for him to want to go fast. I did have him at my dad's, where there's lots of land, and the grass was dry, and we went, I don't know, I got the speed, so I get speed wobbles at 20 miles an hour. The funny thing with that was I was really kneeling into it because the wheel was new to me, and the side to side wobble with my knees really bent into it turned into a steering wobble like that so quick, so I backed off my speed. Well, after that and more road setting, I figured out you can go to the wobble speed and then experiment with what dampens the wobble. And on the MSX, that's just lean your weight to one side or the other, and that just dampens it out easy. Well, on this wheel, as long as your legs are straight enough, that same trick works. The encouragement to do it wrong is the Kuji pad level of knee bend is way down here. For me, a deep bend is up here. So I'm not as deep of a knee bender as Kuji rolls. and he's the one that kind of set the design for the wheel. But I do like the shape of it here, and if I really need a good solid boost, I can lean into it with that added second layer of essentially a power pad, where I got my first power pad level and then my second level out here. I did lower my pedals. I tend to use high top sneakers as my favorite footwear. That came from on the E Plus, when the wheel would hit you in the back of the leg, it would hit you down low. That wheel's so low. But I got a few nice pairs of high tops and boots and stuff. So instead of putting my my ankle joint here into that, like right on the lump of my ankle bone, into this crotch here, I tend to put the top of my sneaker under there, and then my toe fits under there just nice. So with the pedals lowered, I'm not so high up in the air, and most of the time when I'm using suspension, I'm not trying to go around curves or anything like that. So it works pretty well to have the pedals in a more natural, ordinary kind of position. I haven't measured them, but looking at them beside the MSX here, they're still quite a bit higher than the MSX pedals, and you get 4 inches of travel. So how much higher? Well, maybe a couple inches higher. So it can go from a couple inches higher to a couple inches lower than the MSX. So will I ever bother riding the MSX again? Yeah. It'll go 42 miles an hour, and I've gone 35 lots of times, and especially mixing it up with cars on a 30-mile-an-hour road. If you can't do what the cars are doing, and they're passing you, if that road's too narrow, you don't know how much room they're going to give you, and that's not a good feeling. Now, as for riding with the dog, yeah, I'll choose the S18. Tailgating and dense population areas, yeah, I still use the E Plus. And the great thing about the E Plus is, hey, want to try it? Here, try it out. Oh, you learned it. You want to borrow it for a while? It's basically an indestructible loan out wheel. And actually, I have a second E Plus, and a friend of mine in Maine has it right now. And there's a kid locally here that might want to borrow it next, so we'll see how that goes. So is the S18 worth it? Yeah, but be ready. Think of it like an old Harley or something like that. You're going to want to modify it. You're going to want to customize it to yourself. And there's plenty of things to figure out how they work when you get them. It comes locked. It comes distance speed locked. The shock is deflated. You have to either get elbows or figure out how to use the block. So it turned out one guy I saw was pumping his shock to like 200, 100, and that was what motivated my 200, 100 block, no block test. And turns out that levels off at 150, 150 when you pull the block out of there, which no wonder he had so much sag. And the sag is when you just stand on it and it sinks halfway through its travel. That's too much sag. And then his video, he was riding it, looked like he was bottomed out the whole way. My first ride on this wheel, first 3 or 4 rides were like that until I figured out how to get the shock inflated. I didn't expect it to come deflated, but it did. So unbox it, figure out the app enough to unlock it, and then Sasha and I took it around the neighborhood a couple times. She even put the first scratches on the pedals. This way. Oh, and surprising, I was walking across a real narrow bridge, and I put my first mark on it here. That's quite a gash in the pedals. What happened was I was just trolleying while I was walking. Loki had to walk behind me, and there was barely enough room for me and the unicycle between my right side and the guardrail there. And even though I had the pedal up, the pedal crashed into the guardrail, one of the posts on the guardrail. And you wouldn't think 3 miles an hour is such an impact, but my God, it put a notch in there, you know. So, like saying destroyed his V11, fell off, and then it went forward and crashed into something. And I think he was going like 20 or so. Yeah, speed like that's enough to hurt, man. I think if you fall from head high, you might have 12 to 13 miles an hour drop speed, which is about the threshold of where a helmet would help you anyway. So if you're not going over 10 miles an hour, you're well, you're yeah, helmets. Yeah, that's another story. Gear. I tend not to wear a lot of gear. If I'm going for a ride with traffic, I'll gear up. And my favorite gear is that helmet up there with a pair of wrist guards. Other than that, I tend not to wear any gear except a hat to keep the sun out of my eyes, you know. So under 10 miles an hour, yeah, I don't bother with the gear. Over 15, I want to be geared up, and short little runs to 20, 25. I don't worry about it as long as I'm sure where I am and where the road is smooth and no cars are coming out at me or anything like that. Traffic-wise, the biggest hazard is just like a motorcycle. Somebody cuts in front of you, and that's mostly at the street crossings going from one sidewalk to another, and I even had a school bus cut me off. Anyway, I guess I'm getting gabby. Anything else about the S18? Yeah, I figured out how to hang a shit bag on here for the dogs. It kind of goes like this while I'm riding. And the firmware update didn't really fix the trolley handle. If I turn the wheel on, you'll see that even though the trolley's in the trolley position, well, it turned off this time, I guess. I was gonna say it still tends to move, so when you pick it up, it tends to roll on you, and it doesn't, like you'd expect it to just cut out and lean forward or back, but it's like when you pull it up into that lift position, you still have a little bit of self-balancing effect. So the lift switch, the switch itself is working, but the firmware, they've got some story about inadvertent handle position change, which if you notice, you don't need the button to go from there to there. I don't know why they did that. Why would you have a detent there that you have to button out of? But and the same thing, pushing it down, you have to push the button to get it to go down. But from the bottom, I guess that's one of the peeves. I'd rather have a lift position that's a real lift position than the worry that the handle could bounce up and then you'd be flying off the wheel. And I don't think their firmware thing is that smart to know that's what happened, even though that's their story for why it works the way it does. So anyway, all in all, with the Kenda tire, the half fender, the elbows on the back, it's a great wheel. There's speed anxiety over 25. You don't know how much margin you have, so it's not a great traffic wheel. It's a good really great off-road wheel. Curve shots and ordinary stuff where you hit potholes in the grass and unseen objects, you survive them. All right, I'll cut it off here.